All right, Yevamos Daf Gimel. Today's daf is pretty much just analyzing the words of the Mishnah, why the Mishnah listed things in certain orders, and cover some of the basic ideas that the Mishnah had explained. So we start off, the Mishnah had said there are 15 ervos that are exempt from Yibum. So first thing we want to talk about, and we started to mention this yesterday, is just what is the reason for the order? You could have listed those 15 ervos in any order. You would think maybe it has to do, why do we immediately start by talking about your daughter, then your daughter's daughter? You would think maybe you should start with whatever generates the biggest punishment, which is the most severe. Maybe you'd think that you should start with your wife's sister, because that's what's explicitly mentioned in the Torah. And so we're trying to figure out the reason for the order. So the Gemara pretty much explains that it's just that the order that was outlined really has to do with the closeness of that person to you, and then there are some logical connections between what we just said and the next erva. For example, we start off with the daughter, daughter's daughter, and son's daughter. Why? Because those are all of your blood relatives. The next thing is 3 generations. Because we mentioned 3 generations from you or a man, then we say 3 generations from a man's wife. So that's like your wife's daughter, your wife's daughter's daughter, etc. Then because we're talking about your wife descending, now we talk about your wife ascending, her mother, her father's wife, etc. Then we move on to talk about, because we said 3 generations from a wife ascending, so then we talk about your sister and your mother's sister. There's not really a connection between that and the previous thing, but just because that's the next in the line. And then we discuss, because we're talking about sisters, so we mention your wife's sister, even though that's really the only one that actually has roots in the Torah, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the daf. Then we say, speaking of siblings, let's cover your wife's brother and their brother-in-law, and then we end off by discussing your daughter-in-law. So that's the order that that the Tana has decided upon. Now we analyze some of the more fine words in the Mishnah. For example, why does it say the word aser? Why does it say the word pater? It should really say the word aser. That these 15 ervos should be completely aser. Not just that you're exempt from doing Yibum. And so we say the reason why it says pater is because other than Yibum, the co-wives can technically marry the guy. It's really just in this instance of Yibum that we say not just the 15 ervas, but also their co-wives, and those co-wives are no longer needed for Yibum. If we were to use the word aser, then we might get the impression that they are never, even when it comes to just general marriage, that we would think that the co-wives of ervas are forbidden to a man. Then we say, okay, fine, that explains aser versus pater. But why do we use the word, why do we say Yibum and Chalitza? We should really just say exempt from Yibum, and we'll understand Chalitza. So then we answer no, because if it didn't say Chalitza, I would think that you are required to do Chalitza for all of these 15 ervas. And then we say, okay, why does it keep saying the number 15 and the word Eled? That sort of implies that we're excluding something. And we say, yes, it is excluding. There are certain instances that are also excluded, for example, the sota and the islandess, because, for example, if whoever's technically eligible for Yibum for a guy, if that woman were to be a sota, or she's accused of, she cheated on him, then her co-wife is also exempt from Yibum. So that's another situation that would technically be included, but they're not part of the 15. And the other one is an islandess, which is someone basically who a man married for reasons other than childbearing, because it's assumed that she is unable to give birth to children. So that covers some of the more specific wording. Then we want to understand, okay, so where do we learn that there's no Yibum by these 3 people? By an erva, by an erva's wife, co-wife, and then by an erva's co-wife's co-wife. So the pasuk is, we learn this from Gzera Shava. There are two psukim. One says, Isha alecha salo sikach litzror legalos erbasa aleha b'chaya, aleha, which means a woman and her, basically a man can't sleep with a woman and her sister while the woman is still alive. And then we have another Mishnah, another pasuk that says Yivama Yavo Aleha, which means basically that you can do Yibam, but because it uses the word Aleha in both cases, it shows that that just like it's halachic to do Yibam, so too you have to follow the halachic guidelines, and that implies that you cannot, the ervas are untouchable. Then we say, so that explains Yibam, but it doesn't explain that explains the erva, but it doesn't explain her co-wife. So we say that pasuk also used the word litzror, which specifically refers to a co-wife, and the word sror doesn't just mean co-wife, but it means like multiple co-wives. That must be a grammatical thing. I didn't fully grasp that, but that sort of covers both one co-wife and multiple co-wives are usher. Lastly, we want to know, where do we learn this concept of the 15 ervas? And there are 6 others that we that really should be included as well, because there are 21 ervas that are listed in the Torah. And basically say we can learn all the remaining 14 from the pasuk that talks about your wife's sister, because we learn just like your wife's sister, who's usher to the man, and you're able to do yibum. It's who's an erva. If you do it willingly, you get kares. If you do it accidentally, you get chatas. This is someone who you technically are eligible to marry, right? Your sister's sister. That excludes certain people that a man is never able to marry. It's usher to do yibum for this person. So too, anyone else who falls into this category, i.e. the other 14 ervas, are also patur from doing yibum. And that concludes Yevamos Daf Gimel. Tomorrow we're going to jump into analyzing that Gzera Shava that I mentioned before and break it down. Have a great day.